I messaged the CEO 8 times, 0 response, right? And at that time, I had another client that was a direct competitor, another big client. And I said to him, I said, listen, I'm young, hungry, I'm an ex-athlete. Either you're going to work with me, or I'm going to take all your candidates and send them, all your employees and send them to your direct competitor. He messages me back, Ben, on Monday. It goes, Domenic, I'm going to set you up with my head of customer success. Boom. That introduces me to the recruiter.
Welcome to the Elite Recruiter Podcast with your host, Benjamin Mena, where we focus on what it takes to win in the recruiting game. We cover it all from sales, marketing, mindset, money, leadership, and placements.
I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast. I have a special guest that I've actually been looking forward to chatting with. We're going to talk about how he built $1.5 million in his first year of his recruiting business. We're going to talk about some of the things that he did to set himself up. We're going to talk about the work ethic that he does and how he's building his team. So I am so excited to have Domenic Maiani on this podcast. So welcome to this episode, Dom.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat with you.
Oh man, I've been following you for a while and I've been watching your growth. I've been watching the things that you're doing. And like when it comes down to like recruiting, you're absolutely on fire 24/7.
Yeah, well, you have to be, right? It's part of the game.
First of all, talk about what you're doing now, and then we'll walk into how you even ended up in this wonderful world of recruiting.
Well, what we're doing right now, we just closed a major deal I was just telling you about. So I've been back and forth on, with the attorneys, legal, just closing this thing out. But it's a great agreement. It's a cash flow agreement. That's something we need because we're all direct placement. So this is something that, it's help from our team, quick wins. But I'm in a different spot now than when I first started, right? So now we're trying to build a team and jump into different industries, add on, grow. So totally different from when I first started, my agency 3 years ago, whatever it is now.
Well, and to grow, you have to keep on evolving, which is exciting. So congrats on that huge win. And for the listeners, I want you guys to get some big wins this year. And this is why we're having Dom on this episode. So how did you even end up? Actually, you know what? Let's take a few steps back. You were also a college athlete and a pro athlete, right?
Correct. College hockey at the Ohio State University, and then a couple of years semi-pro. And then, I was in semi-pro. Anybody that's listening to this that knows hockey, it's just you're traveling back and forth on buses. And it's not the best money, but you have a shot to make the next level, right? But I had, 6 injuries in 5 years that just destroyed me. My thumb, my jaw's broken. Still to this day, that's why I have a little lisp and this. Ankle, ACL, shoulder, my back, it's just destroyed. So, I'm always pacing up and down the hall when I'm talking with candidates or employers. It's pretty crazy.
Okay, so you played college and semi-pro hockey. Like, did injury take you out of the game officially?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's one of those things about college athletes is like our identity is like athletics. Like we live it, we breathe it, we like everything 24/7 is athletics. And then it was all taken away from an injury.
Oh, yep.
How did you like work on your identity, and how did that end up into recruiting too?
That is such a great question. And that is a lot of athletes struggle. And I still talk to a lot of guys that played pro, 10 years in an NHL and then retire. And they still struggle. After 10 years and they have 30 million in the bank, it's hard to, go back when your life was like, hey, I'm practicing from 9 to 10 a.m., and then I'm done for the day. And then we have games on the weekend or, sometimes during the week. But, I had to figure out a way to jump back and to take that work ethic and drive and put it into something else. How did I get into recruiting? Well, it's not like, I grew up saying, hey, Dad, Mom, I want to be a recruiter. When I was done playing hockey, one of my buddies was like, hey, why don't you come trying to be a recruiter? I was like, what's that? And now the way I look at it is like, I'm an NHL scout. I just relate everything in business to hockey. It's just, for me, it's so easy. As you can see hockey jerseys in the background all over. It's just how I operate. That work ethic, that drive, the consistency, get it out of your comfort zone. I could hear all that stuff in my head still from my coaches. It's no different in business. It's just now just channeling that energy to this.
And okay, so you got started in the recruiting space. Recruiting it sounds like it found you. And like, did you start off like at an agency and kind of grow from there?
I did. I started at Spark Talent, which is, the owner was my age, right? And now he's doing very well. I think he has 5 or 6 agencies, but I learned a lot from him. And same thing, he's driven, ex-athlete, he's very successful, just bought a building downtown here in Troy, Michigan, just killing it. So I think it's just in us. I hate losing. I can't lose. I refuse to lose.
All right.
So I have 3 kids.
So now you can't afford to lose.
You can't afford to, period. Not an option.
I want to get into like you getting your business started, launching your own company. Because, it's one of those things where, you hear like the hook, 1.5 million your first year.
Right.
Like, did you plan to launch your company? Was this something that's just like been in your mind that you've been like designing and you finally just hit go and went for it? Or like, what happened?
No. So the past recruiting firm I was at, I can't name, I was managing a team, right? We were doing very well. It was a smaller team, but we had 6 recruiters, and I started showing up early and they would follow, right? And everybody was driven, keeping their laptops up. It was more in the light industrial skilled trade space, a little bit of direct hire sprinkled in here and there. But, they started to see that what I was doing, right? And then I would stick up for them, and I would go back to the owner of the company at the time who I got into recruiting, and that's how he started his agency. He shows up in a lime green Lamborghini one day after I tell him, hey, our recruiters need a raise. We need to give these guys more money. They're producing a lot of money for us, right? We were billing out a lot of money, $175K a week, in temps and plus, direct hires sprinkled in. So he shows up in a lime green Lamborghini and I go, you are not going to meetings in that car. And I knew that day it was time for me to go. And this was, right in the midst of COVID, everything scared out of my mind. And I was making great money, right? So for me to say, hey, I'm done. So I get sued for a non-compete. I forgot to tell you that part in the first year, right? So I have to pay $100,000 instead of going back and forth to court. We were doing so well when I first opened, and I'll get back into how I did so well right off the beginning. I would give them $100K right off the bat. So think about that, starting your business and then having to pay out $100K.
And most people don't, like, when you start a business, like most businesses take a while to like get the revenue, get like,
right,
business, get everything. And then like you have to turn around, literally hand $100K.
It was, but guess what? I didn't care because I was making it. I made it back that same week. That's how things work, right? But how did I get to that point? It was connections, networking. The hockey world is a very small community, even though, I can talk to somebody in California that knows hockey and we have an instant connection. So how this worked out when I started my agency out of my basement, right? No plans for offices yet, just getting started, scared out of my mind. I have 1 kid, 1 on the way. Now I have 3. One of the guys that I was, coaching his son hockey, 14-year-olds, was the president of a logistics company. Well, he ends up moving to a global logistics company, and their office was based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is 2 hours from Rochester. He goes, screw that. I'm putting the office here in Rochester, Auburn Hills area. And I need a team, Dom. So my first month, 25 people. And the best part is, Ben, he was working out of my office, 1 interview and done. I mean, that's a unicorn. Everyone in the recruiting space knows that is not normally going to ever happen, but that's just how it worked out for me. Then I just continued to build from there.
Okay. So real quick, I want to dissect this. So like for the listeners, absolute unicorn, it normally doesn't happen this way. But you had the relationship there. Like he knew you well enough. Like outside of work, do you talk about recruiting?
Absolutely. And so let me back up a little bit. We were recruiting for him when I was at my past company, for his company, who was, the president. But yeah, everywhere I go, my wife hates me. She's like, because we'll go for a walk around the block and I'm talking to everyone, my neighbors. He works at Bosch, and restaurants, talk to everyone. It's just part of my DNA. It's just how we operate. You have to be. You have to be talking to, like I think John Bartow said on one of your episodes, 15 to 20. I do that no problem. It's before 9 o'clock. You know what I mean? It's just part of what I do. And I think even for me, like I'm in a golf league today, right? My golf league is just filled with, high individuals that are across different companies, different industries, but I make those connections. They make a warm intro here. There's nothing better, as you know, than warm intros instead of cold calling it. Do we still do that? Absolutely. But a lot of my business now just comes from networking. And warm handoffs.
And so a recruiter that's in there listening to this, like, how do they really get that conversational hat on? Or is it just like, is it natural for you?
It's natural for me, but we have somebody in the office right now training and he has that natural skill set. And I found that. How do you take that and go operate in the recruiting world? It's no different. You're building relationships, right? And finding out how you can solve their pain points. And their pain points right now is if they post a job, right, they have 1,000 applicants within an hour with AI tailored resumes, right? So we go to them, hey, we're in this niche. We know people in the space, thoroughly vetted. We have people on our team that worked in the industry for 30 years, 25, 30 years. So that's our niche. That's our space. That's what we know. And those are the candidates that we're talking to on a daily basis. We're following their career paths, watching where they go. Hey, did they, just get promoted? All right, let's keep an eye on that candidate. Those are what we have a hot list here, right? In different spaces like warehouse management, TMS, supply chain visibility, you name it. That's on the tech side. Then you go to the 3PL space. There's a lot. When you say supply chain and logistics niche, Google Supply Chain Tech Map 2.0, for example. Just there's so many different verticals inside of that, But that's our space. That's our niche. But I would tell them just, keep after it, build relationships, true relationships. Don't always go and ask somebody for a sale right up front. It's not going to work.
You got your whale client. You started off with a whale client, which is highly unusual, but how did you get your second and third client?
Oh, just grinding on LinkedIn all day, every day, just messaging, shooting messages. One of the biggest clients I got, and I'll say it now, and John Rahm, the golfer, wore it on his shirt, Blue Yonder. I messaged the CEO 8 times, 0 response, right? And at that time, I had another client that was a direct competitor, another big client. And I said to him, listen, I'm young, hungry. I'm an ex-athlete. Either you're going to work with me, or I'm going to take all your candidates and send them, all your employees, and send them to your direct competitor. He messages me back, Ben, on Monday. It goes, Domenic, I'm going to set you up with my head of customer success. Boom. Then introduces me to the recruiter. It was just, I don't take no. And if somebody says no at that company, okay, great. I'm on to the next person. It's just part of my DNA. Hey, work ethic, drive,
Okay. So you like went after him 8 times before. With 0 responses. How did you keep track of those 8 interactions?
Just on my LinkedIn, but we also have an AGS that I track everything through. And now we use Loxo, but before it was Big Biller, Top Echelon, which I still have a seat in because I didn't want to transfer all that data. It costs a lot of money to transfer that data. So I just kept one seat over there, and I used Loxo because Loxo is great for the dashboards, tracking all that, the metrics that we want to track. But yeah, it was just nonstop following up with them. And I also had built out my target list with my ICP, my ideal client profile, right? And then the decision makers under those companies. And then I would just go and attack them, put them in a cadence, 3 to 5 week cadence. And then, I think nowadays, we're finding 8 to 14 touch points, right? Like till you can get a conversation with them at least. So that's what we're doing. And that's what I've stuck to. And it still works.
I love that you broke it down, because a lot of people I've seen when it comes to sales, recruiting, all sorts of things, it's like 1 or 2 no's or 1 or 2, they don't hear anything. It's back to they're gone. They're off the list. We're no longer chasing that person anymore.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. And recruiters, I was with Forbes Jobs when they launched that, and a lot of recruiters that were running 7-figure desk. Well, guess what? The supply chain or the SaaS tech startup space, was destroyed, right? So I'm like, what are you doing now? And they're just like, oh, that's my niche. Well, you have to pivot and be able to adjust to the market. If you're not, guess what? That 7 figures went to, I know somebody that has made 0 placements right now this year, going from a 7-figure desk. I can't have that. Like I said, I have a wife and 3 kids. My wife does not work. My kids go to private school. It's not an option. Plus, I have a team here.
If logistics dried up, would you pivot to another industry?
100%. I already have. And in the case of growing our business, we're getting into financial services. We already signed Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch. I don't care about giving out the names. Go ahead and get them, try. We did that agreement I was just telling you about. That's a 4,000 job order agreement. Now, that's the one I've been going back and forth for months here, dealing with attorneys. Didn't sleep 2 nights ago, just going back and forth. How could we figure this out? And that's, getting on the phone with the client and figuring out a way, because what they were worried about and understanding their pain points is hey, if you brought us in all these candidates in month 1, that's a huge, cash burn for us. So we had to figure out a way to work with them and spread that out. And we made it happen.
A 4,000 person job order?
Yeah. It's basically unlimited. And I'll explain to you after, but it's unlimited. I met the CEO. He flew out here to Michigan, met with him. I hit it off right away with him. I see he's driven, passionate, wants to take over the industry. He's like, Dom, let's go. I'm like, I don't really do that space, but I'll learn it real quick. And this is how things work. I could even back up further. At my old office, we just moved offices. At my old offices, there were guys that were in there from the mortgage space that jumped into solar because they heard solar, everyone was making money. Well, they got screwed, and they would come down to my office and chat, and I'd be like, hey, why don't you guys just jump into recruiting? I'll teach you. We could do the mortgage space. Well, from a networking call, another recruiter was like, Dom, I gave him a free tool to use on LinkedIn. And he was like, Dom, I just met with this CEO. I can't handle it. I'm newer. He's like, do you want me to make an introduction? I said, yeah, no problem. So I met with them, and that's how it came about. So that's another thing too. And always networking with other recruiters. How can I help them? And what can I learn from them?
Okay, so wait, this was a networking from another recruiter that just like really put this introduction? Because like a lot of times, like recruiters, at least the way it was many years ago, it's like, I don't want to talk to you. You might know my secrets. You might chase my competitors, but I'm seeing a lot of like people that are like absolutely crushing it. They talk to other recruiters.
We collaborate all the time. I talk to one of my biggest competitors probably 3-4 times a week, Brent Orsuga. You had him on your podcast. Me and him are just wired different, right? And we know that. And he texted me today. He's like, are we nuts? I go, yeah, we're pretty nuts. I don't think anyone out there is as crazy as you are. But yeah, there's people that operate at certain levels. It's hard to have that conversation with somebody else that doesn't operate at that level, right? So it's nice chatting with him because he gets it.
So I want to kind of take this interview a little bit of a different way. I think that you, based on the conversation that we've had, either offline, now online, you look at your career and your daily life like you are a professional athlete.
100%. Yeah.
Professional athletes, you always have to stay at the top of your game. Like it is a next level for everything. So for a recruiter that wants to become a professional athlete in the space, we'll kind of walk through this. What does your mindset look like? What does your work ethic look like? What does the habits look like? What are you doing outside of work to impact the work? What does a professional recruiting athlete look like?
So I'll give you what my schedule looks like, right? So I wake up at 5 a.m. I go to the gym. I get to the office around 6:30. I do some journaling, get prepared for my day. I like to come in really early so I can get a lot of things done because as soon as 8:30 hits, we have our team call, and then I'm just bombarded with calls all day. But I do a lot of reading, a lot of listening to podcasts, a lot of self-development stuff just to get better. And then I'll hit the day, right? 8:30 to 5. Well, that's our office hours. But I'm in Michigan, right? And we're in Eastern time. I have clients in California. So my day doesn't stop. But I go home and play with the kids for 2-3 hours and then get back on the laptop, and that's, let's say from 7:30, 8 to 9, 10, 11. Sometimes I don't even sleep because I know where I need to get, right? And how did I figure that out? Well, one of my team members introduced me to the book Traction because I had a hard time in the beginning, delegating tasks off. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It was so hard for me to do. And he goes, we use this at my last company. It really works. And what Traction is an entrepreneurial operating system. It's putting the right people in the right seats and trusting that, they fit in with our core values, our morals, the way we operate. Are they a good fit for that position? And here's a perfect example of it, right? It's a daily plan, what I go through, and I do my journal in here. What do I have to get done today? And then really just setting my 5 must-dos, critical must-do list. And it's like, I won't shut my computer down until these tasks are done. And if that's me calling my wife saying, yes, I'm missing dinner, she gets it because it was a trade-off. 3 years ago, I told her, listen, this is going to be a grind, but if you want to quit your job and, the kids got to go to private school, this is what I got to do, and she was okay with that. Do I still get shit from her? All the time, but it is what it is and you got to deal with it, but part of the game.
Okay. So that's your daily habits. What about the mindset?
Mindset is like, I have such a fear of failure. That's not an option. I don't even think of that as an option. When a lot of people say, well, I want to try it and see how it goes. It's like, no, I'm in. I have to make it work. There's no option. Stay disciplined. Mindset is everything, right? It's like, if you tell yourself you're going to fail or you're worried about failure, it's going to happen, right? You ever read the book The Secret? Right now I'm reading Psycho-Cybernetics, and it has everything to do with that, right? Self-image. When I was playing hockey, my motto was look good, feel good, play good. No different than how I operate in business. Look good, feel good, play good. I have to be on top of my game all day, every day. And it's hard for me to, one of the new recruiters that we're training, He's trying to sit behind me and watch. I'm going back and forth and doing 90 different tasks. He's like, what are you doing? I go, it's too hard for me to train you right now. Go to Andrew's office, watch him. And Andrew's one of our best recruiters. I would not be where I am without him.
You mentioned real quick, like your fear is the fear of failure, and that's one of your biggest drivers.
Oh yeah. I don't have an option. It's zero option to fail.
The reason why I wanted to clarify that real quick is because you see like a lot of people that just absolutely crushing it. And you see like the big goals, like the dreams, the big goals. This is where I want to be in 10 years. But I feel like a lot of times the daily driver is what you just said, like for you.
Yeah.
Like you can't fail.
Not an option. Zero option. I don't even put that word in my mind. And yes, do you want to set your 10-year goal out, right? And traction does that. You know, you set your 1 year, your 5, your 10, all your goals, and then you just reverse engineer it. Like, okay, what do I need to do for this quarter? And then what do I need to do for this month? If I want to make an average placement fee of, let's say, 20 grand, all right, how many placements do I need to make 200K? You know, as a recruiter on our team, we'll reverse engineer that and show them, okay, what are your goals? What do you want to make, right? And let's show you how you can get there. And then dummy down the numbers, like Brent and I were talking about right before this call. Dummy down the numbers and then show them like, okay, daily, this is what you need to do. Roughly, like based on past data that we've tracked, this is what you need to do. Now get after it.
Let's talk about health. To be a top athlete, you said you're hitting the gym almost every single day, right?
Yeah, gym, sauna, just vitamins, AG1 I take, you know, just anything to help give you that little bit of edge, right? Whatever I got to do to stay in top. And that's not only me, you know, like I learned a lot of that too, dealing with a lot of the C-suites that I deal with on the other side that are clients. Like, how is this guy a CEO? What is he doing? So I'll just listen to them. It is so different. You always find the top performers are pretty much trained like top athletes. You have to, you know, to stay at the top of your game, to deal with all the stuff that we have to deal with, plus kids and this and that. You know, it's how do you keep all that noise out of your mind during the work? Because it's going to happen. You're going to have off days where you're like, I don't have the motivation today. But if you have the discipline and you constantly do it over and over, good things are going to happen, right? So, you know, having that discipline and that mindset will set you apart.
Is there anything else that you learned from being a high-performing college athlete and a pro athlete that you've taken into your recruiting business?
Doing hard things, getting out of your comfort zone. I just put a post about this today. I've had this drilled into my brain since I was 8 years old. Get out of your comfort zone. And whether that was me taking a shot on, like when you're going down the ice, taking a shot, he would say, no, but, you know, do it, skate backwards and, you know, do it from right here, half cocked. And I would be like, okay, you know, and then get used to doing that shot. And then now practice and train on that. And then just, you know, flip with a stick just to, you know, throw the goaltender's eyes off and it changes the direction on him. Because I was a centerman. Back when I was playing it, you know, 5'10", that was small. You have to be, back in the day, it was 6'1", 6'2" to be in the NHL. Now you see that NHL, it's a lot of the smaller guys, more skilled. They changed, you know, it's not like old time hockey.
Where these giants are flying across the ice.
Oh, I mean, I was playing with guys that were 6'2", 6'7", 6'5", just absolute tanks and tough as nails. That's who I had to go up against. So I had to work extra hard, and I was always very strong on my feet and training and lower body, my legs and my core, always staying so that way nobody could push me over on the ice.
I know a lot of former college athletes and pro athletes in the recruiting space. So like you've grown up a little different. You've trained a little different. Like I was a cross country runner in college. So I had 90-mile weeks where many times I'm by myself just grinding out those miles. But somebody that didn't have that athletic background, how can they kind of like capture that I'm going to become a pro athlete in the recruiting space? How do they get up to that?
It falls back to mindset and discipline, right? Like if you decide this is the path that you want to take, you know, because most people don't fall into recruiting or don't decide like, I'm going to be a recruiter. They fall into it, right? You know, because they found out somebody was doing well or making this kind of money. It's, you know, you really just have to self-educate. YouTube University, you know, if somebody just listened to your podcast, just a guest that you had along, that's like going to university, right? Just listening to the people that you've had on. I can name the list of people that I know on your podcast that if you learn from them, just listen up. Another thing too, though, there's a lot of people selling these courses out here that don't know, like Tom Alessio, great guy in the space, absolutely amazing, willing to help, gives away information for free to other recruiters. we have a problem with people that are charging people 15, 20 grand. And it's just BS that you can learn just listening to your podcast or other people's podcasts. I struggle with that because it's like, oh, you're going to charge somebody 15, 20 grand when all they have to do is go and listen to a podcast. But a lot of people don't know that, right? But I would highly recommend finding a good mentor or a proven coach that has had a successful career recruiting and maybe transition into coaching. Pay for that for sure. It'll help you jump different levels that you run into mistakes like I did, starting my business, right?
You kind of like laughed at the mistake. What was one of the biggest mistakes that you ran into that other people can learn to potentially avoid?
Getting a 6-figure tax bill my first year.
Wait, talk about that.
Yeah. Just having no clue. And that's having no clue how to be set up financially as a business, structure, all that. But, now I'm an S corporate, multiple LLCs, money's flowing over here, over there. I have a CPA firm that's very expensive, but they save me a lot of money. But when I opened that first bill, I was like, what? There's no way I'm paying this. I'm like, I called the CPA. One of my uncles is very successful in business, all of them actually. And I said, hey, I need a top-notch CPA because I am not paying this bill. I need to figure out a way to avoid some of this, this taxes and divert it. So I learned real quick that, okay, being set up, the way your company's set up, and then also just having a great CPA bookkeeper, making sure that you're doing the proper things right up front. If you run into that and you hit a 6-figure tax bill that you have to pay, there goes your cash flow. I already had to pay a 6-figure tax bill my first year, the $100K and the non-compete.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys are just absolutely crushing it. I mean, you just got a crazy new work order, crazy new contract. You've got multiple different lines of business. You crushed it your first year and you've been growing a team. What is working right now when it comes to business development?
You have to stand out. A lot of people are still doing the email marketing and, sending out 10,000 emails. It's like you have to be really specific and do some research on the client. But what we found that is working for us, Loom videos, going on their profile. Hey, Ben, I see this job open. I just want to introduce myself, and say that, talk a little bit about your company or not even ask for the sale up front. I just want to introduce myself. We recruit in this space, blah, blah, blah. Our team's trying different things and just seeing what's working, but something different to stand out, instead of reaching out via LinkedIn and saying, I see that you have this job open. I have a candidate for it, or doing that NPC. NPC still works great. That always works. But what a lot of people are doing is they're sending fake candidates and trying to get in, and then they're backtracking. Oh, I don't have that candidate, but let me, find one that will fit that. And then it's like, all right, well, now you already started off on a bad foot. They caught you lying. You don't have a candidate in Jonesville, South Carolina that's in this space. So it's just, Loom videos and just, I think I have to do better at this. And this is where I'm constantly learning day to day and just posting more on LinkedIn. But for me right now, it's like, you can't ever stop business development. But right now we have a lot going on that I'm working on. So kind of putting it aside for a second, but I'm not really stopping. I'm always talking to people, networking, and it's what I do daily.
So when you say that people should never stop business development, and I do understand that you have a massive job order and fulfillment's going to be key, but I see a lot of times, and this is something I've seen in myself, like once you get super busy on the fulfillment side, the BD starts dropping down. What do you typically, prior to this big agreement, what's your typical BD cadence? Like how many people are you reaching out to still keep that engine and that funnel going?
I think 100 a day. Reaching out to them and follow and put them in a 5-week cadence. And that's having touch points via LinkedIn, email, phone calls, texting, whatever it takes to get in. Like I said, on that other one, it was just 8 messages on LinkedIn, no response. And then I finally got one. And it's really just doing whatever it takes. And I don't take no for an answer. So I'm going to find a way, especially if I know that they can use recruiting firms in the past. And then once they see the value that we bring, now we're a true partner. Like one of my clients we work with right now, we have 4 meetings with them every week with different hiring managers from their division. They're a publicly traded company in the supply chain space, and they're amazing people, amazing company. And I love recruiting for them. Not only that, I learned so much from meeting with the senior vice president of sales every time I'm on the call.
That's awesome. Well, before we jump to the next part of the podcast, is there anything else that you want to share about making that jump on your own, business development, becoming a recruiting athlete or professional recruiting athlete, or just anything about the work ethic and the journey that you've had?
I would say if you're going to jump into space, make sure that you do some due diligence, make sure this is something you want to do long-term, because this is not a short-term play. This is a long-term. Like there's a lot of recruiters that are transactional that jumped in when the market was hot. And now you see that they're no longer in the industry or they're looking for jobs in other industries. That's not the game plan that I set. It's a long-term play. So just constantly building relationships, networking, going to events, meeting new people, and also just helping. Sometimes giving stuff away for free just to help them, not asking for anything in return. Watch how many good things happen.
Love that. So jumping over to the quick fire questions, and I feel like some of these questions that you're dealing with right now because you're training new recruiters, what advice would you actually give to somebody just starting off in the recruiting world this year?
The mindset thing, discipline, being a true professional. What does that take, right? Having a structured day, schedule, time blocking, setting your goals. For us in our industry, it's like, if you get a placement, that's great. But like, until they start, don't get too excited until they walk through that door, especially in this market, right? I think in February or in January, right? So February, we had 200 and something K that we lost in 1 week from accepted offers. This was horrible. I still do get hurt on those, it sucks, but I know, like, what am I going to do? I have to just plug away and move on. I can't just sit there and be depressed. What is that going to do? Okay, you're depressed. I'm great. Next, move on. That's the mindset you got to have.
Same question, but for people that have been around the block 5, 10, 25 years, what advice would you give to them to start seeing success or keep on seeing success?
Collaborate with other recruiters for this situation. Like we were just talking about, like I just got all these job orders, but if I do get a new client and maybe it's a little bit outside of my niche, well, guess what? Now I have a partner that I could pass it on to. Where everybody back in the day was so like, oh, I'm not talking to that recruiter. We were all against each other 14 years ago. Like I wouldn't even have a conversation. Now it's like I'm seeing a much more collaborative environment. It's been great. I'm sure you see it. There's a lot of groups that we're in on Facebook and Discord groups and this, and everyone's helping each other, which is how it should be. We have to go up against the big dogs, right? So let's help each other.
I absolutely love that. What is one of your favorite tech tools at the moment?
I think just since we've been getting used to it, we just signed on with Loxo a couple of months ago. So I'm still getting used to it, but I love it just because it's so easy to track for me and dashboards and all the functionality of it. It's amazing. I literally probably demoed 20 ATS with, experienced recruiters, very experienced, 20, 25-year recruiters that have used every ATS out there. And it's not a plug for that. I'm not getting paid for Loxo. It's just, they built it right for what I need. It's not for everybody, right? Like some other firms that maybe do staffing and other things that may not be the best for them, but this is what I needed.
I love that you're a reader and constantly reading with how busy of a schedule you have and how many kids that you have and all the plates that you have spinning. Has there been a book that's had a huge impact on your own personal career?
For business traction, it taught me delegate to elevate and then really just setting out your goals and then reverse engineering them. But I do love Patrick Bet-David's book, Choose Your Enemies Wisely in Your Next 5 Moves. And choose your enemies wisely is really just going on your, is having that chip on your shoulder. Every athlete, even if they don't want to admit it or not, they'll keep it internally. But like look at Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, these guys all had chips on their shoulder. Tiger Woods, right? All of them. And they may not admit it to the public, but trust me, they want to go after somebody and beat somebody. I think that what that does is it just raises the standard, the bar. Like, okay, you wanted to be with me, we got to operate at this level, which is then in turn making me better, right? So it's great. If everybody could just stay at the standard, MEI, merit, excellence, integrity.
Love that. You mentioned earlier on in the interview that you guys were just like, you're the boss place that you were at, like absolutely crushing it. And you wanted to give your team a raise. Like shortly after the guy drove up in a Lambo.
Lime green.
Ooh, lime green, which is loud.
Yeah.
Going into your own firm, what was one of the biggest takeaways that you wanted to make different?
Run it the way that I want to run it, going in a different direction. But not only that, is making sure that everyone on the team's taken care of and they have the tools they need and they can set themselves up for success, buy a home, do whatever they want to do, whatever their goals are. Let's figure it out and let's reverse engineer to achieve it. Going back to traction, it's, not being greedy. They're busting their butt every day, all day too. Like I would not be where I'm at. Like I've told you many times with a lot of the recruiters I have on my team, Colleen, Andrew. I mean, these are just people that help me get better every day because I'm learning from them. They're learning from me.
with how long you've been recruiting and definitely with your own business, and like you just spoke about earlier this week or earlier in this year, you had a negative 200K week, or you lost 200K in placements in 1 week. How did you like make it through those downturns? You just keep on grinding, or what goes on in your head?
You just keep grinding. Like I said, you have to have the mindset. What are you going to sit around and be depressed? Yeah, maybe for a minute, for an hour, yeah, it sucked. Oh, let me go for a walk. But I mean, at the end of the day, you still got to move forward, right? If you're not moving forward, you're screwed. And that's just for me. It's like, we don't count those until they walk in the door. But that was really tough to see, 200K just walk out that door when we're trying to go through that door, right? So it was tough, absolutely. But you have to have, the ability to just, short-term memory. Forget about it, move on.
One of the things I love about you, and I've been kind of following you for a long time, is you, and you've talked about this, like collaborate and share. You share with a lot of recruiters. A lot of recruiters are constantly like asking you, like, what are you doing? How are you doing these things? Is there a question that you wish these recruiters would actually ask you? What's that question and what's that answer?
How to keep doing more, how to keep getting better. And then I think that my response would be to just stay disciplined, network, and collaborate with other recruiters. Like, for example, I just did a split with a recruiter out of Ohio. She's like, Dom, I know you're Metro Detroit. I know you know everyone there. I was told from somebody else, I have a plant manager position in automotive, which I'm in supply chain logistics. Guess what? I filled that and it was 20K in my pocket, right? So just collaborate. You never know where, even if you don't have that role open, but you have great candidates come through, even if I'm not getting paid for them, I still want to help that candidate because that candidate's always going to remember Domenic in Lazio Search Group helped me, even though they didn't get paid for it. I'm fine with that because, again, I'm playing the long-term game.
And this is kind of the final question, but I'm going to ask it twice. And the first is going to be like looking back at your recruiting career, or maybe even like shortly after you finished playing hockey. If you had a chance to go back to that time and have a cup of coffee with yourself or a conversation with yourself to give yourself advice, what advice would you give yourself?
I wish I would have learned marketing, branding, analytics way earlier. And I'm still learning it now, but that is a huge key because sales and marketing go together, bread and butter, right? It's what we do as recruiters, sales and marketing all day, every day. Sales for me is fine. I just wish I would have learned more of the marketing side, especially when it comes to branding and stuff like that. I'm just not good at that stuff. So I'm learning and I just read books and listen to podcasts and eventually I'll get better.
The same question, but like going back to, 2021 when you started your own search firm. If you got a chance to go back and kind of like coach yourself and be like, hey, you should do this or do that, what would you tell yourself for advice?
I'm an S Corp and I have multiple LLCs, but make sure that I had that structure in place with the right people around you. Yes, it may cost you money up front, but the long term is so beneficial that, like, if you've seen what he was able to do for me, you'd be like, wow. I think just putting yourself around the right people and having those conversations. But I would have never known about some of these people and what I needed if I didn't reach out. I know there's a lot of coaches that are doing this and helping people now, fast tracking all that for them. But I had to go through it myself and fall real quick and then get back up, just keep learning.
That's awesome. For people that would love to follow you, how do they go about doing that?
I'm always on LinkedIn. So Domenic Maiani on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I think I have a TikTok too. What do they call it? X. Yep. X or X now. But I'm not really on X. But to be honest, if you want to go, reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'll follow up with you right away from there.
Before I let you go, is there anything else that you would love to share with the listeners?
Keep plugging away. Don't give up. Set your mindset, be disciplined, and just keep moving forward. You'll have a win. If you keep the plan, stick with it, keep moving forward, and just listen to podcasts that Ben has and other people out there. All the info's out there for you. Just go and listen to it and take it, and then you make it into your own.
Love that. And thank you for that. So, man, I just want to say thank you so much. Like I said, at the very beginning of the podcast, I've seen you go over and above, sharing, contributing to the recruiting community, going out there and helping other recruiters, helping them win, helping them succeed. So look forward to this conversation. Look forward to sharing your story. And for the listeners, guys, I want you guys to keep crushing it. Make 2024 your best year yet. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ben.